tell, do you see the road? I'm out to my soul into the size whenever the smoke clear out of my face and my picture perfect.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the second part of, What If BEN10 Meets Powerpuff Girls? Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of man of cartoons on fanfiction.net. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Jack and Buttercup arrived at an underground base. It turned out that what seems like the base on top was really the entrance to the real one underground. But getting in wasn't easy as they fought off laser beams, robot insects and Aku's robot drones. The underground base was actually deserted. It was a wide open space with no sign of human life. Buttercup and Jack proceeded forward, but with caution and a bit confused. This is weird. Buttercup looked around her as she said slowly, no machines, no source of transportation. And no time machine. Jack finished and felt dejected. Now that's where you're wrong. Jack and Buttercup heard a voice. The familiarity of the voice reminded Buttercup of someone, which sparked anger within her and on her face. Buttercup spun around and looked up to where the voice came and yelled, "You! I see you brought back your ugly face so I can smash it." Standing behind a railing up, Ian stood with a grin on a face. "I see you're still your snappy self. I thought our last encounter would have taught you a lesson. The only lesson here will be my fist to your face." Buttercup growled with a fist up. "Feisty aren't we?" Ian chuckled before laughing out loud. Once he finished laughing, the time traveler vanished in a flash of purple light. Buttercup felt intense with anger that Jack had to hold her shoulder to hold her back. He knew something was wrong that his other had gripped the handle of his sword. "Get ready," Jack whispered. Buttercup agreed in mind, but didn't reply to him. Jack knew it and said nothing as he too got ready. Ian reappeared just a few meters from them in front of them. His presence intensified. Buttercup and Jack became very observant. However, Ian didn't seem too worried by this. He snapped his finger and in a flash of light a huge robot appeared behind them. Buttercup and Jack looked back to see the robot. It was about 15 feet tall with big upper body armor. It almost resembled a humanoid robot except that it had no head. The chest of robot opened to reveal a psychopath chimpanzee with high intelligence. "Mojo!" Buttercup snarled. "You are right." Mojo grinned while exposing his teeth. "It is I, Mojo Jojo, and I have come from the past to destroy you so the burden that is with you and your sisters will be lessened." "Shut your yap, Mojo." Buttercup snapped, "I don't need anyone to take you and ugly face over there." Ian smirked, "We'll see." Mojo's robot's chest closed before it charged at them. He was soon followed by Ian, who drew out a lightsaber and charged. Since the villains were at the other side of the heroes, Buttercup became furious to decide who to attack. Jack drew out his sword and got ready to fight. He faced Ian with the intention to fight him, but he didn't get the chance. Buttercup ran directly at Ian, leaving Ian with a surprised look. He didn't dwell on it as Mojo came at him and threw a fast punch. Jack moved out of the way and let out a battle cry as he charged at him. Buttercup approached Ian and threw consecutive blows at him. But it was in vain as Ian used time speed to easily dodge them. This angered Buttercup, who halted her attack and shot laser beams from her eyes. Ian swift to the right to avoid it and threw a fast punch that knocked Buttercup to the ground. He made a purple lightsaber into a WHP and shot it around her ankle before throwing her against a far wall. Ian snickered with an excited grin and ran at Buttercup. He got close, but she got up in time and faced him. She gave a deadly glare and did a sonic clap that blew Ian away. Buttercup smiled a bit and charged at him, liking the turn of events. While both powerful opponents fought, Jack ran as multiple missiles were right behind him. He moved right and left to avoid them, but they still followed him. But when he ran to a wall, he ran on top of it and jumped off it. He did a flip over the missiles and landed on the ground safely, just in time to hear the missiles explode on the wall. Jack then went to face at Mojo and ran at him. But of course Mojo noticed and began to shoot several miniature laser beams from his robot's wrist. He tried to get a good shot of Jack, but the samurai was too quick. He even swung his sword at close-up lasers, redirecting them somewhere else. "No! I will not lose to you!" Mojo yelled in anger. His words didn't mean much to Jack. He approached Mojo very fast and swung his sword at him. However, at the last minute, Mojo jumped into the air. He avoided the strike of Jack's sword and hovered in the air by jets under the robot's feet. Mojo let out his evil laughter with another evil plot in mind. The robot's fists formed huge blaster cannons and fired straight at Jack. The samurai saw them coming and ran off to avoid them. But Mojo didn't stop firing at him. He kept sending blast after blast at Jack, forcing him to run to avoid them. When Jack began to go too far, Mojo followed Jack and continued to attack. He enjoyed seeing him run and began to laugh in his own messed-up way. He failed to notice that he came closer to the ground, giving Jack a plan. Jack came to a stop and rolled backwards. He went underneath Mojo, drawing the attention of the supervillain. "What the?" Mojo turned around. Yeah. Jack let out his usual battle cry as he flew with his sword high. Before Mojo could react, he struck his sword into the chest of the robot. Since Mojo was in the chest, he let out a monkey shriek as he moved himself into his seat to avoid the tip of the sword. Jack drew out his sword and jumped off the robot. He watched the robot squirm as it tried to regain its footing. He guessed that he might have damaged some of the controls, which so happened to be the cause. It didn't last as the robot stood well again, though its chest kept sparking electricity. "You think you have beaten me?" Mojo's voice came from the machine. "I am Mojo Jojo and I will crush you, samurai. Your defeat shall be sweet and quick, as it is I that have the upper hand in technology and—" Jack's mind wandered away by Mojo's yapping as he saw Ian flew straight at the robot. The impact sent both of them flying a few meters away. Jack didn't have to wonder who it was as he faced Buttercup. "Now we got them on the run," Buttercup said as she stood on the ground next to him. "It seems so." Jack nodded, but a thoughtful look on his face. Buttercup didn't seem sure that Jack agreed, but let it go. She and Jack became prepared to fight as they watched Ian and Mojo stand up. "We're not done yet." Mojo groaned as he got up. "Oh yes you are." Buttercup smirked. "Right, Jack." The samurai didn't reply, though he nodded with a focused look. Buttercup noticed his expression, but left it behind since she was enjoying the moment. "With Jack, Ben and I, we can do whatever we want and no can stop us." "I beg to differ." The voice of Aku echoed in the air. Suddenly, the evil overload appeared right in front of them with a grin on his face. "Aku!" Jack snarled. Buttercup became dumbfounded as she was worried. "You're here. But how? Ben should have kicked your butt." "Ha ha ha." Aku laughed and bellowed, "Fools." He loved the look on Buttercup's face as he continued, "I am Aku. No one goes against me without suffering through consequences, as in the case of the samurai. You'll pay for this, Aku." Buttercup snapped, "Now tell me what you did to him." "Simple, mere child." Aku snickered a bit. "I took care of him the same way others go when they defy me." Something within Buttercup made her snap fully. It might be because Aku might have killed her friend or the gloating he enjoyed. Either way, she still flew straight at the demonic evil that is Aku. Jack was surprised by this and shouted her name to stop her, but it was too late. However, Buttercup didn't get close as Aku fired his huge hot lasers. She got hit that instant and was sent crashing to the ground. Jack was shocked, but got over it as he took out his sword and held it up and deflect Aku's laser beams. But when Aku ceased his attack, Jack was hit by a laser from another enemy, sending him crashing to the ground. "You see, Jack." Aku walked slowly to him, "You've lost." Jack gnashed his teeth with a deadly glare. He gripped his sword, but realized it wasn't in his hand. Realizing something wrong, he looked away from him and found the sword just a few meters away. He must have let go of it when he was shot. The samurai tried to get up, but Aku grabbed him and lifted him up to his face. He laughed right into his face, but then glanced above them. The ceiling began to open, showing the skies once more and a flying ship. It was lifting down a huge coffin by a blue beam which helped lower it. "Well, will you look at that?" Aku's smile grew with amusement. "Our package is here." Just a few feet away, the ground opened to reveal a blue swirling portal. Jack knew very well that it was the time portal, which meant that the contained creature was being delivered right into it. "We've got her," Mojo said in his mechanical robot suit. He held an almost unconscious Buttercup in his hand with Ian next to him. Aku looked back at his fellow supervillains and smirked. He had that same smirk as he looked back at Jack. "So you see, Jack, no one will save you or your friend. You've failed, just like the pathetic human you are." "No way!" a familiar voice shouted. The voice sounded so familiar that Mojo gasped while Aku and Ian let out shock exclamations. Even Jack and Buttercup were surprised as they looked up to where the voice came from. It revealed to be Ben, standing with the same bruises and cuts. He stood on the edge of the open. "I'm no pusher over, Aku." Ben shot a straight glare at him, "But now you're gonna learn." Like an instinct, the face of the Omnitrix sprung up with an alien hologram. Ben brought his Omnitrix hand up and slammed it down by his other hand. He became engulfed in a flash of light as his body began to change. His body blew like a balloon while he began to have yellow armor and his body completely changed. When the light vanished, Ben stood as a hulking, broad-shouldered alien that's covered in yellow armor plating on his back, shoulders, and back of his arms. He wore mostly white with black on his upper half. He also has 4 claws on both of his hands and sharp teeth. The Omnitrix is on his forehead. "Cannonbolt!" Ben cried out at his loudest. "Now let's get things rolling." From where he stood, Cannonbolt jumped off and rolled into a sphere form. He came down fast on Aku and hit at the face, sending the giant falling to the ground. This caused Aku to free Jack, who ran and got his sword from the ground. However, Cannonbolt did not stop there. As he hit Aku, he was bounced to a wall where he bounced off and flew straight at Ian. But he noticed him coming and moved out of the way to avoid him. Cannonbolt missed, but he bounced off another wall and hit Ian. The impact hit Ian hard and sent him into the time portal. After hitting Ian, Cannonbolt unrolled himself and skidded a bit. He furrowed his eyes at Mojo as he clutched Buttercup in his mechanical hand. "Give up, boy. You have no chance of beating me," Mojo said. "I don't plan of beating you." Cannonbolt stood up boldly. "I plan on rolling." "Rolling, really?" Buttercup scoffed a bit. Cannonbolt became a sphere again and zoomed straight at Mojo. He had to dodge laser blasts from the psychotic supervillain as he came closer. When he did, he became faster and shot off from the ground and hit Mojo's robot right in the chest. The impact made him to release Buttercup as he was sent flying into the time portal. Buttercup landed on her feet safely. She watched as Cannonbolt stood in his sphere form before standing normal. "Now how about that for rolling?" Cannonbolt smiled. Buttercup shrugged. "It's the worst comeback I've ever heard. But you could do better." Cannonbolt was about to make another comeback, but looked back to see direct laser coming at them. "Buttercup, move!" Cannonbolt shouted as he shoved Buttercup away. The beam hit Cannonbolt hard enough, sending him into the portal itself. Buttercup was shocked that she only stared at the portal with wide eyes. Jack also felt the same reaction as he stood once again after a blow from Aku. His fight with him had gone so well until Aku turned into an octopus and pushed Jack away. He used that chance to blast at Cannonbolt when he had the chance. Ben! No! Jack cried out in fear. Aku simply snickered as he shaped back to his normal form, HAHHHA. Foolish Jack. I've dealt with one of you and now two to go. I wouldn't count on that. Buttercup yelled in anger. She flew straight at Aku and threw a fast punch to his face. He fell to the ground hard, but became a giant serpent. It would seem you haven't learned from your friend's defeat. Aku said, allowing a hiss to come out since he was a snake, but soon I'll destroy you and the samurai. Buttercup and Jack got ready to fight. They were very angry about what happened to Ben. He just came back and now he's gone. The time portal may have taken him to an unknown time PRD since he was knocked into it. A battle was about to commence, but a huge flash of green came from the portal. It suspended the upcoming fight as Jack, Buttercup and a dumbstruck Aku looked at the portal and found a dark cloaked being floating above it. Dark Mare. The being bellowed. From the sound of his voice, he was a boy. He wore a black jumpsuit with green stripes that came from the wrist and to an hourglass symbol. He had a purple cloak, shaped like a hawk, that covered the top half of his face. There were green stripes on his jeans and sleeves which went all to an hourglass device on his chest. Ben. Buttercup looked at the newcomer in hope. She received a smile smirk that answered her already. Darkmare's fists glows a dark aura, empowering them. He glanced at them with a smirk and flew straight at Aku. Before Aku knew it, he was given multiple hard blows that forced him to move back. He managed to recover at the last minute and disappeared. Ben! Buttercup called out to him. Darkmare looked back at her and flew down. I heard you guys miss me. Shut up. Buttercup snickered as she punched him in the arm. Suddenly, the ground below them shook and burst as something came out. Aku in the form of a giant worm swallowed them and shut his mouth with a grin. However, he cried out in pain as a familiar sword pierced through his stomach and opened it. It was through the open that Jack, Buttercup and Nighthawk came out. Aku quivered from the pain and fell to the ground. It gave Jack enough time to talk to Buttercup and Darkmare. You two have to go and stop that creature before it's taken into the portal. I'll deal with Aku once and for all. Both Buttercup and Darkmare understood and nodded. They flew off to do their part, leaving Jack to deal with Aku. Got any ideas? Buttercup asked. Just one. Darkmare looked up at the slowly descending coffin. It's odd how slow that thing is coming, isn't it? Ben. Buttercup snapped. Oh, right. Buttercup, you destroy the ship delivering it. Isn't that going to bring the thing down faster? I like destroying things like the next guy, but not when it can make things worse. Just do it. I got a plan. Darkmare gave her an assuring nod. Buttercup didn't seem too sure, but took off to the ship above. Darkmare watched her go before sitting in a strange position and began to meditate. I hope I still remember those words Raven always says. He muttered to himself while concentrating. It didn't take a while before he felt power wash all over his body. A dark aura surrounded Darkmare, empowering him with much power as he needed. Azareth Metrian Zinthos, Azareth Metrian Zinthos, he kept changing the spell over and over again. It began to work as the coffin was engulfed in a dark aura. By this point an explosion was heard as Buttercup destroyed the ship and came back to see Darkmare chanting a spell. Since the power was built up, Darkmare snapped his eyes out and shouted out, Azareth Metrian Zinthos. The dark aura upon Darkmare formed into an energy hawk and flew straight at the coffin. It spreads open its wings as it came upon the coffin and covered it whole. There were a few bursts of energy as it contained the energy. It finally released a combustion explosion that destroyed the coffin and itself. Darkmare felt exhausted and fell to the ground. Fortunate, Buttercup caught in a bridal style and looked at him. The other hero let out a mm and smiled at her. Well, this is awkward. Buttercup giggled a bit and let Darkmare to stand on his feet. The omnitrix on his chest began to beep before changing him back to his normal self. Both of them then heard a loud cry of pain and looked to the opposite way. They found Aku form into a scorpion after being struck by Jack's sword. He raised his stinger and struck down on Jack, but he used his sword to shield himself. Jack dodged another sting attack and ran at Aku. He had to dodge a few stinger attacks before making it underneath Aku. There, he brought his sword up and pierced it into Aku's underbelly and ran with it still inside him. Gah! The sword! Aku cried out in pain. A large gash was left before he collapsed to the ground. He gritted his teeth as he looked at Jack standing with his sword in his hand. There was no way Aku was accepting defeat, so he shaped into a giant lizard and charged at him. But the samurai jumped back to avoid a swing of his large hand. "You cannot win, Aku!" Jack yelled with determination. Aku glared at Jack, but withdrew as his eyes wandered to Ben and Buttercup. "Perhaps you're right. For now our final battle will not be today." Jack was confused, but followed where Aku was looking at. He realized a trickery of the demonic shape-shifter would take place and shout out to them, "Ben! Buttercup! Get out of the way!" Huh! Both teen heroes were confused. Aku snickered as he shot direct laser beams at them. Buttercup realizes what Jack meant and pushed Ben and herself out of the way. But by doing so, Aku's beams hit the time portal just a few meters on the ground. It didn't take long before it made an explosion and began to shrink. Aku smiled at his handiwork and faced Jack. "Nice work, samurai. You've helped me do something even greater." Jack let out a small growl as he looked at Aku with pure hatred. He had the same look on his face as he looked back at Ben and Buttercup. "Both of you must go before the time portal shuts down. It should hold on for a while, I hope." "Hope?" Ben looked scared. "But what about you?" Buttercup asked as she feared for her new friend. Jack calmed down a bit, but still had the determination on his face. "I'll be fine. Now go." "No!" Aku shouted, "You will all die. Activate self-destruct mode." A computerized voice filled the air as it said, "Self-destruct activate in 15 seconds. The sudden countdown made Jack and the young teens to fear. They turned to face Aku, who laughed into the air as he gloated, "You didn't think I didn't have a backup, did you? This day you'll all die and Aku shall reign with no hindrance." Jack felt his anger quicken, but turned to Ben and Buttercup. "Go now before the portal closes. I'll deal with Aku." "We're not leaving you, Jack." Buttercup refused. "You'll be killed." Jack became quiet as he closed his eyes. He turned his face away from them and opened them, this time filled with anger at Jack. "Then let it be that I take down Aku with a fight and honor." Both Ben and Buttercup were shocked as they saw Jack charge at Aku. Buttercup was about to run and aid him, but Ben caught her wrist. "We have to go. The portal is shrinking." Buttercup was hesitant, but scoffed, "Fine." Small tears formed in Buttercup's eyes, but she wiped them away. She made sure not to look back and jumped into the portal. Ben was about to join, but he looked back. He saw Jack sliced a hand of Aku, which caused the demon to cry out in pain. Ben glanced at the Omnitrix, hoping that it was recharged so he could help. But the alien device was still in recharge mode. In defeat, he frowned and muttered, "I'm sorry, Jack. Goodbye." With that said, he jumped into the portal. Jack halted his attack and looked back at Ben. He had heard his voice and watched him jump him. Though he was fighting Aku, he formed a small smile and looked at Aku with an angry glare. The computerized voice came again, this time counting down. 5. Jack pursued Aku as he flew off as a bird. 4. Jack jumped and caught him by the back feather. 3. With his weight, Jack forced him to the ground. 2. Jack raised his sword in the air. "This ends now." He spoke boldly. He struck the tip of his sword into his chest, causing the demon to scream in pain. He formed into goo and was absorbed into the sword. 1. Jack struck the sword into the earth, trapping Aku in the ground. He smiled at his accomplishment. 0. An explosion rips through the park. Thousands of years back in time, the city of Townsville looked the same way as it had. It had life in it as people moved through the street and the city did its normal activities. On top of a building, a portal appeared and let out Ben and Buttercup. It closed right behind them, but none of them cared. They were saddened at what might have happened to Jack that they didn't feel like rejoicing. Another life caused by nefarious. Ben whispered with a small spark of anger. Buttercup sighed and smiled a bit. I better go. My sisters will be looking for me. I hope Jack made it. Me too. Ben looked back at her. So can I stay at your place? Sure. Both of them then walked to the entrance of the rooftop. None of them were in the mood of flying after everything that had happened. A week had passed since Ben and Buttercup returned from a terrible future version of Townsville. Since then, Ben was introduced to the rest of Powerpuff Girls and their creator by Buttercup. When Buttercup also explained everything that happened, the rest of the girls were surprised with the professor showing the same reaction. They were even shocked about Ben and the Omnitrix that he possessed. It wasn't long before they accepted him to stay home with them. After a day of introduction, the girls did their usual heroism, but Ben stayed behind. The reason was because Blossom wasn't sure that Ben was capable of handling such situations. Buttercup agreed with her on it because that gave her the chance to tease Ben about how powerful they were. Ben was angry, but respected them as he stayed home. It became a routine for Ben that he became so bored. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore when the week ended. When the girls went off he followed them by foot so he won't get detected by them in any way. In the city of Townsville, the girls were battling against a giant rock monster. It has a humanoid body with one eye and elf ears by the side of its head. The girls came at the monster and shot laser beams from their eyes at it. However, the hard rock skin of monster kept it from harm. The monster saw them and backhanded them, sending them flying through buildings. Ben arrived at the scene and saw the monster. Wow, this is so cool. The monster must have heard him as it now had its one eye at him. Seeing that the monster was coming at him, Ben made a run for it. But the monster managed to grab him and lifted him up to its eye. It was at that moment that the girls arrived to see the scene. Ben! The girls shouted in surprise. Ben tried to come up with something to say to the girls. But since he was lost in words he pushed that aside as he pulled his hand with the Omnitrix and activated it. An alien hologram appeared before he slammed it down, resulting in a flash of light. When the light, in Ben's place was a humanoid pile of goo with an anti-gravity projector that hovered above his head. Goop! Ben shouted. He then looked at himself. I haven't turned into this guy since my training with Danny. The rock monster roared as it raised its other hand to squash Goop. However, the alien flew right out of its hand by the anti-gravity projector. The monster roared in anger and tried swatting Goop with its hand, but couldn't succeed. Goop flew around it in a vain attempt to distract it, which in turn made the monster a focus on him. It was able to backhand Goop, sending him crashing to a wall close to the ground. Goop hit the wall and in a flash of green light was back to his normal human form. Amen. Ben groaned as he stood up. The monster roared again, but Buttercup and Bubbles flew at it while Blossom flew to Ben. She sent an angry look at Ben and blew ice from her mouth. Ben was frozen to the wall with his hands apart from each other. Now stay put. Blossom yelled and flew off. Ben growled in anger, but nothing could be done. He now had to watch the Powerpuff Girls fight off the rock monster, which was something he wished he could do. Later that night, the Powerpuff Girls and Ben returned home. The fight with the rock monster was rough, so it took hours before the girls left. Blossom carried Ben while at the same time ignoring what he had to say about helping them. As much as she appreciated the help, it was too risky to do so. Ben had once told her about a time limit his Omnitrix have, so she was afraid that if that happens that he might get worse in a difficult situation. When they got home, Buttercup and Bubbles flew to their room by the window while Blossom flew to the front door and dropped Ben. The teen hero huffed in anger and began walking away when Blossom put a calming hand on him. "Look, Ben, I'm sorry for what I did there, but it was for your own safety. You saw how you did back there and it was rough. I only froze you so you won't get hurt in the fight." Blossom tried to assure him. Unfortunately, Ben shrugged her hand off his shoulder. He snarled lowly and faced Blossom. "I don't care about that, Blossom. I've gone through a lot worse than a rock monster. What happened there was a mistake which—" "See, a mistake." Blossom interjected, "In the fights we get into there is no room for mistake. You just have to understand that we're trying to protect you." "Shut up!" Ben yelled in an outburst of anger. Blossom was taken aback from the outburst. It now occurred to her that she had finally made Ben to snap. The teen hero had a fresh glare of hatred on her before turning back and walking into the house. Blossom still remained outside, trying to process through what just happened. A feeling that both she and Ben were being watched came to her and she looked up at her rooms. She managed to see Buttercup and Bubbles' faces before they went back into their room. Blossom finally looked back at the door and sighed, "What have I done?" Morning came up once again and the Utonium family was up. The professor was in the kitchen preparing breakfast when the Bubbles and Ben walked in. "So I was like, dude, that's gonna hurt." Ben cracked a joke of his hero days. Bubbles giggled from the humor as she took her seat by the table. Ben sat on a seat the professor had added and saw the breakfast prepared for him. The Powerpuff girl also saw her food and began eating with Ben doing the same. The professor heard them come in and turned to them. "Good morning, Bubbles." "Good morning, Ben. I see both of you are up this morning early." Bubbles looked from her breakfast and smiled. "Yes, Professor. I don't want to be late for school." Ben chuckled. "I'm not awake for that. I just woke up early for once. It's weird really." "Well, Ben, it's good you are up for your first day of school," the professor revealed. Once Ben heard that word, he dropped his spoon with his mouth wide open. "You're kidding me, right? Actually, I don't joke about schools except the time I went to the annual Chemistry of Genius last year." I think the joke went off like. Bubbles turned to Ben and whispered, "Cover your ears. The professor's jokes aren't good." Ben nodded and did as he was told. Bubbles covered her own ears while the professor went on about whatever the joke the teens will most likely not understand. The time for school soon arrived and the girls were outside, ready to go. Ben came out of the house and met the girls with a backpack of his own. "So when is the bus coming?" Ben asked. Buttercup smirked, "Dude, when you're a superheroines like us you don't need the bus." After that, she took off to the skies with Bubbles following her. Ben took a few steps forward while going to the Omnitrix, but a hand held his wrist from touching it. He traced the site of the hand and found out it was Blossom. The Omnitrix bearer shot her a glare. "What do you want now, Blossom? You can't change into an alien here. Come on, I'll just carry you." However, the teen hero refused as he knocked her hand off his wrist. "You're not the boss of me. You're not my mom." At that finally outburst, he slammed the Omnitrix and was covered in a flash of light. Blossom had to shield her eyes until the light died down, revealing an alien in Ben's place. Standing in Ben's place was a moth-like alien. He has a blue humanoid body with 4 big wings and an antenna on his head. The most recognizable thing of the alien was his green eyes and the Omnitrix symbol on its chest. "Big Chill," the alien bellowed. Now as Big Chill, Ben glared at Blossom and Foggy Ice at her face. "Back off." Right after then, Big Chill took off to the skies. Blossom watched him go before getting over what happened and flew after him. She came close to Big Chill until the alien noticed her and quickened his speed. However, Blossom was determined and flew faster to catch up to him. Ben, stop. You're going. Big Chill turned to her while flying and shot an ice breath at her. Leave me alone. Blossom was hit by the ice blast which froze most of her body. Since she couldn't move, gravity took over and sent her crashing to the ground. But Blossom quickly summoned her strength and broke out of the ice before she could hit the streets. It was then that Buttercup and Bubbles arrived behind her. Wow, you must have made him really angry. School is right over there. Buttercup said and pointed to the right, where the school was visible to see. Blossom sighed sadly, I tried to tell him, but he won't listen. Buttercup rolled her eyes and huffed a bit of air at her right hair bang, well duh. You're acting like his mom. I've seen what Ben is capable of, so you shouldn't be worrying over him. He can handle himself. The Powerpuff Girls remained quiet for a while as they stared at each other. Buttercup gave Blossom a glaring look before turning back and flying off to school. Bubbles didn't say anything, though from the worried look she gave Blossom she was afraid on who to side. She might have reached her decision though as she flew back to school to catch up with Buttercup. Watching her sisters go, Blossom sighed deeply and flew after them to head to school. Right then she wasn't sure on what to do. Townsville's middle school was like any other normal schools. It had its usual ups and downs like popularity, club activates and other things in schools. Just because the girls goes to the school doesn't mean much was different. The building was big with different classes, rooms and structures of its own. It remained safe from harm though, thanks to the Powerpuff Girls. When the school bell rang, the students began to head to their classes. The numbers of students in the hall soon reduced until it was almost deserted. The only ones to be in the hallway were the Powerpuff Girls. The leader of the girls was furious as she walked very fast to make it to class quick. Since she was going fast, her sisters tried to catch up with her in the same speed. What is taking Ben so long? Blossom yelled angrily, I thought he'll be here by now. Buttercup growled a bit from frustration and got in front of Blossom, calm the heck down, Blossom. Whatever Ben is doing, I'm sure he's fine. You can kill him when we get home. Blossom sighed softly, being calm enough to speak, the professor wants him to be here. It's already the second PRD and he's still not here. If he doesn't get here now, he'll. She would have continued, but a sudden breeze blew against her and the girls, interrupting her and blowing their hair. The sudden wind was unusual since it had a blue blur pass right them. The girls followed where it went and found it standing right behind Bubbles. The Powerpuff Girl shrieked as she jumped back, while looking at a blue and black feline-like alien. It was as they looked at the alien that they noticed the Omnitrix symbol on its chest. Ben? The girls asked in unison. Hi. The alien smiled and did a wave. He taps the Omnitrix symbol on its chest which changed him back to normal in a flash of light. Standing in the alien's place was Ben, sorry I was late guys. Fast Track had some hero work to do. Who's fast you know what? Forget it. Blossom shook her head rapidly as she pushed the question away. She came forward to Ben and was about to say something, but Buttercup pushed her away to the ground and put her hand around Ben. Dude, you took forever to get here. Come on, let's get you to the principal office. At the last sentence, Buttercup took Ben by the wrist and took him away. Blossom sat on the ground while growling with a glare at Buttercup. Bubbles came to her and brought her hand out. Are you okay, Blossom? Yeah, Blossom sighed as she looked up at her sister, I'm fine. Buttercup is out of control sometimes. Since when isn't she? Bubbles giggled at the humor. Blossom giggled and got up from the ground. She dusted her clothes a bit before walking to the principal office with Bubbles following. After some arrangements and introductions, Ben was officially a student of Pokey Oaks Middle School. He got the schedule for his classes and went to them when the classes for him came up. Fortunate for him, each of the girls had a class with him so that way he wasn't alone. He was however distant from Blossom because of her bossy attitude. The time for lunch soon came as the school bell rang. The students headed for the cafeteria, including the Powerpuff Girls and Ben. When they got there, Ben found it like any normal cafeteria. There were long metal tables and students were either eating or chatting with friends. The Powerpuff Girls and Ben went to the food serving and got theirs. The Omnitrix bearer had to admit though that the food was a lot better than his school back home. The milk was cold for enjoyment and other food were included. He stayed behind to get his hands on a cupcake while the girls went to find a table. "So where should we sit?" Buttercup asked while looking around. Blossom found a table and pointed it, "Over there, girls." Agreeing with their leader, the girls and Blossom went to take their seat there. Fortunately, they didn't encounter any troublemakers that might have caused trouble to get the table. The girls placed their tray of food on the table and looked back to Ben. The Omnitrix bearer was still at the serving point, trying to get some food to eat. So far he had gotten the cupcake, 2 pudding cups and now he was going for a chocolate cake. He almost got it, but a hand came and took it from him. This got the teen's attention as he faced the person responsible. "Hey! That was my cake!" Ben yelled angrily. Ben's voice caught the attention of whoever that took the cupcake. When he shouted, the cupcake the person held was paused to her mouth. She took it back and glanced at Ben. "Who are you?" asked the person in a girl's voice. "I'm Ben Tennyson. I believe I saw that cupcake." Ben growled a bit and held out a hand for it. The girl growled herself in a bit of anger, but gave Ben back, "Whatever. I wasn't even interested in it anyway." Ben didn't care of what she said as he put the cupcake with his tray of food. He was about to go on when the girl stopped him. "Hey, wait. You never got to know me." Ben glanced back at her with a confused look, "And I should know why." "Because you're speaking to the most popular girl in school." The girl smirked proudly and held her hand out for a handshake. "I'm Princess Morbucks, Ben Tennyson." Princess Morbucks is a girl with dark red hair and curly poofs on 2 sides of her head. She has freckles on her face, has brown eyes and wore a tiara on her head. She also wore a yellow sweater with a shirt underneath, a purple skirt and matching violet shoes. Unknown to them, Princess was a villainess of the Powerpuff Girls. When he looked at her he didn't see any sign of evil she possessed within. So when she offered her hand in handshake, Ben brought forth his hand to reach hers. However, a direct laser beam came between the same space between their hands, causing them to yelp back and pull their hands aside. Both teens glanced at where it came and found it to be Buttercup. The Powerpuff Girls' action had caught the attention of every student in the cafeteria. The rest of the girls noticed, but there was nothing they could do about it. Buttercup had a direct glare at Princess and left her seat. "Get away from him, Princess." That instant Blossom knew Buttercup might cause trouble. To ensure that doesn't happen, Blossom and Bubbles left their seat and held her back. Buttercup understood to stay back and did as they told. Blossom then left her sisters and walked to Princess. "What are you doing with Ben, Princess?" "It's none of you girls' business." Princess smiled slyly. "I was just introducing myself to him." "Well, introduction is over. And why should I listen to you?" The smile on her face spread as she continued. "Are you his mom or his girlfriend?" Everyone made a "oh" sound from that word. Blossom blushed from it and heard her sisters snicker. The students also laughed a bit, which caused her to blush more. She managed to get over it as she shook her hand and faced Princess angrily. "First, he's not my boyfriend. Second, you should leave now." To emphasize her point, her eyes flashed red. Princess knew the fun for her was over and complied. "I'll leave here." But, she walked to Ben and handed him a pamphlet. "I'm having a party over and I want Benny here to come." "He's not coming with you," Buttercup yelled. Princess only snickered and winked at Ben with a smile. After that she walked away, which in turn brought back normalcy into the cafeteria. Blossom glared at Princess while she left, but of course the villainess didn't see it. The other 2 Powerpuff Girls walked to Blossom and Ben. "She didn't do anything bad to you, right?" Buttercup asked, though she sounded angry enough to attack Princess if she harmed Ben. No, I'm good. But I don't see why you girls are overprotective. Ben said. Blossom explained, Princess is a bad girl. You shouldn't hang out with her since you don't know her like I do. Ben gave a glare at Blossom, but out of my life, Blossom. I never asked you to. With that said, he walked right past Blossom, hitting her shoulder with his intentionally. Blossom was surprised of what he did and was about to go to him. Buttercup held her back. Leave him alone for now, Blossom. He just needs time to himself. All right. Blossom sighed with a frown. Outside the school, Ben walked right out the exit door with his tray of food. He was very angry of the incident earlier and right now didn't want to be around the Powerpuff Girls. He appreciated their friendship and welcome to their home, but he hated being bossed around. After all, he saved 2 universes and is fighting a dimensional evil villain who wishes to take over the multiverse. While outside, Ben went to a tree he saw and sat underneath it. His tray of food was on his legs as he kept quiet to enjoy the loneliness. It was nice to get his thoughts away from what happened, but sadly his peace didn't last. A shadow casted over him which made him to look up at who it was. Princess. Ben glanced at the girl in front of him. Yes, it's me. The spoiled girl smiled, so what's a cutie like you doing here? Ben was taken aback. Never has he had a girl call him cutie. In fact, it was his first time hearing such from a girl. Princess easily knew she had him off guard and decided to sit next to him. Relax, Ben, I don't bite. I just came to see how you're doing. Ben felt alright again and nodded to her. I just came here to stay away from the girls. Except Bubbles, the others are too overprotective. I hear you. Princess listened to him. Blossom is mostly bossy. That's why she doesn't have as much friends as her sisters. Buttercup is a ticking time bomb ready to explode and Bubbles is a big softie. Yeah, but I already knew that. So why did they call you a bad girl? Well, I kind of make them angry. They don't like me because I like to be my own person without being afraid of them. Princess lied. She knew just from when Ben asked that the Powerpuff Girls haven't told him she's a villainess. So rather than telling him the truth and giving Ben a reason to hate her, she instead told a lie so that way he'll be against the girls and she'll have a boyfriend by her side. Since Ben didn't know everything about the Powerpuff Girls, he nodded as he believed her lies. I didn't know the girls are like that. Aren't they superheroines? Yeah, but I think it's an act. I can tell Blossom is keeping you so you won't do something that will embarrass them. Princess again lied to the Omnitrix bearer. She saw in his eyes that he believed her. This made her plan work perfectly than she imagined. She stood off from the ground, but still had her eyes on him. So will I see you in my party? Ben glanced at the pamphlet she gave him and looked up to her with a smile. You bet I will. Good. See you later, Ben. With that said, she left back into the school. You sure will. Ben smirked. Unknown to Ben, someone watched from the top of the building. Nothing much could see said about the person from the ground, except that his mouth shaped into a smirk. It would seem his latest ally was doing exactly what he intends to do soon in the future. Now he just has to wait for her to come. It didn't take long before a door on the top of the building opened and a girl walked out. Princess saw the man she was supposed to meet and went to him. She noticed he only wore a black cloak that covered most of his body. The only thing noticeable was a metal scythe he held and his visible mouth. I see you did exactly like I intended. The cloak man said in his satisfaction. Yeah. Princess easily brushed it off as she came closer to him. So now can you tell me who you are? Very well, girl. The man faced her and smirked. They call me Nefarious. Nefarious, huh? Yes. Princess gave him a skeptic look and shrugged. All right, the name is good enough. So why is Ben involved in this plan of yours against the Power BRT girls? Nefarious didn't reply, but his smirk turned into a grin. A flash of red came from his hidden eyes before he answered, You'll see soon, Princess. Until then I have a present that will ensure you total victory against the Powerpuff Girls. Hearing those words, Princess smirked. Excellent. It's about time they get destroyed. As time went on, night soon befall the city of Townsville. Every kid and adult was back in their various homes, sleeping while through the quiet night. But unknown to most parents, the kids began sneaking out of their homes. The reason was because of a teen party hosted by Princess Morbucks. It was a school, so most kids weren't allowed to go out by that time. Among the many kids was a certain brown-haired hero. He pretended to be sleeping in his guest room until the alarm clock vibrated. He quickly shut it off and got out of bed as quiet as he could. The teen was able to get dressed before walking out of his room and went down the stairs to the living room. He was just about to pass the kitchen when he came to a stop midway. The kitchen light was on, meaning someone was in. Ben looked into the kitchen and found the fridge open with someone's feet plainly showing underneath. Before the teen could leave, the fridge was closed by the person who so happens to be Bubbles. She was in her PJs and held a glass cup of milk which was obviously to drink. Bubbles turned to the doorway to see Ben standing there. Her sleepy eyes made it hard for her to see him well, but she was able to recognize Ben despite her fuzzy sight. Ben. The brown-haired teen took a step back and whispered quietly, "This is all a dream, Bubbles. I'm not really here." "Are you sure?" "I would have thought my dream will be with ponies." Bubbles tried to look at him clearly, but her sight were still fuzzy. "Well, if you head back to bed maybe you'll have that dream." If Bubbles's mind was clear she would have known Ben was lying. But since she was too sleepy, she yawned and nodded, "Okay, Ben." From tiredness, she bowed her head a bit and walked out of the kitchen. Ben stepped aside from her and watched her as she went up the stairs. He didn't move a second until he heard the door close. When he was sure the coast was clear he let out a sigh of relief and left the house quietly without making a sound when opening and closing the door. Bubbles went to bed and shoved into the sheets. But by doing so, she accidentally nudged Blossom by the side. The leader of the girls as she faced Bubbles sleepily. "Bubbles, where were you?" "I was in the kitchen talking with Ben," she said tiredly. However, just those words were able to wipe all sleep within Blossom as she sat right up and shouted angrily, "What?" Meanwhile at Princess Party, dozens of kids from Pokey Orcs Middle School were there. It all took place in her mansion, which was a huge estate with a pool, a big hall and other fun games for the good and naughty. As other kids arrived at the party, Ben flew above the mansion as GD. He was pretty amazed at the sight of the party while at the same time liking the music. The light from the house was bright that Ben could have sworn aliens could see it from space. He shook away the thought as he flew behind some trees and changed back. He came out as his normal human form and headed to the front door to join the party. However, unknown to Ben, the Powerpuff Girls just arrived at the party. Blossom surveyed the sight of the party from the air and shook her head disappointedly. "Look at them, girls. These kids should be sleeping to get ready for the next day of school, but here they are now." "Well, Blossom, it looks like a cool party." Buttercup smiled a bit at the sight. But when she said that, Blossom hit her right behind the head. "Ow. What's that for? Try to concentrate on why we're here," Blossom said firmly and flew off to the party. Buttercup mumbled angrily, but followed her sister anyway. Bubbles followed as well to keep up with her sisters. Inside, Ben met up with Princess, who then showed him around the house. Her father was absent, making the party go on without a problem as kids had fun in any way possible. Ben was fascinated at the places Princess showed him, like the game room she personally owned and a giant hall that many kids were dancing to a music playing. "Wow! All this is amazing." Ben kept looking around him while enjoying the music. "Yeah, it is." Princess smirked as she folded her hands over her chest. "So, is it better than staying with those Powerpuff pests?" Ben's smile formed to a frown as he nodded. "Yeah, but the girls are my friends. As much as this party is awesome, I gotta go before they find out I'm gone." "Too late, Ben. Blossom's voice shouted louder than the music. Once the voice of the Powerpuff was heard, Ben's heart felt like it skipped a beat as the music came to a halt. Every kid there furrowed and turned their eyes to the Powerpuff Girls who stood not far from behind Ben and Princess. The Omnitrix bearer and the villainess faced the girls as well, making it that all eyes were now on the superheroes. Blossom's eyes met with Princess's glare. The two girls clearly hated each other, considering their past fights. But this didn't stop the Powerpuff Girl from speaking at Ben. "What do you think you're doing here, Ben?" Well, Ben shuddered a bit, knowing he was caught. However, Princess stood in front of Ben with confidence. "Leave him alone, Blossom. He's not your tool to control." "Who said I was controlling him?" Blossom said in disbelief. "If anything, you're the one controlling him. Ben shouldn't be around you." "Oh yeah?" Princess snarled. "Yes." Blossom snarled louder. Ben knew that moment that trouble was beginning to arise. He decided to intervene as he got between Princess and Blossom. "Look, girls, let's just calm down and talk this reasonably." "No, Ben." Princess yelled and pushed Ben aside. "This time the girls have gone too far." The villainess raised her wrist and pressed a button on a metal bracelet. The item glowed a bit before spreading from the wrist and growing all over her. It also caused a yellow bright light that forced the kids to cover their eyes in an attempt to shield it. When the light died, everyone unshielded their eyes to look at Princess. When everyone looked at Princess again, they found her dressed differently. The girl now wore a yellow armor suit which almost resembled her old armor suit when she was little. The only difference with the new armor was that it has armor sleeve and black leggings. Princess smirked as she looked around everyone and then the girls. "Prepare to die, girls." The Powerpuff Girls were taken aback from the new change, but quickly became themselves again. They've faced Princess so many times that they weren't afraid of her in the slightest way. However, they didn't know that Princess' latest way to destroy might assure that. "Pfft! I've seen better." Buttercup scoffed at the villainess. Princess only smirked a bit more than she did before forwarding her fists at them. Two cannons replaced her hands and she shot bright blue beams at the girls. However, Blossom saw it quickly and shouted, "Girls, division attack formation." Quickly, the girls flew apart from each other, but still headed for Princess. Blossom flew to the air and came down and attacked the villainess. Bubbles came from the right and Buttercup came from the left. The girls moved in such a fast speed that time seemed to slow down for them. However, Princess was unfazed by it all and let out a burst of energy from the suit. The blast from the suit hit the girls, sending them crashing to the hall's walls. Princess laughed into the air with her hands on her waist. The girls were now on the ground after falling off the wall. They became conscious enough to hear Princess's evil laugh and quickly looked at her. Buttercup became fully angry at the villainess and stood up. "All right, that's it. I'm not holding back." "Buttercup, no." Blossom warned her. However, Buttercup ignored her team leader as she flew straight at her. She clenched her fists tightly, making it so that they were covered in green flames. Once she came at Princess, she threw multiple fast punches at Princess. But when she did, Princess dodged them easily in a faster speed than the Powerpuff. The only thing that Buttercup managed to do was force her to take a few steps back. Suddenly, Princess became intangible that Buttercup's hand went through. The Powerpuff was caught off guard and quickly drew back her hand, giving Princess the chance to grab her throat. Before Buttercup could react, Princess sent high voltage of energy from her hand and into Buttercup. She watched with delight as Buttercup screamed from the major pain given to her. Even the kids, Ben and the Powerpuff Girls watched with fear as Buttercup was being taken down. Princess ceased her attack on Buttercup, which also stopped Buttercup from screaming. The Powerpuff Girl was weakened to the point that she could barely keep her eyes open. Princess grew a grin as she drew back her fist and threw it hard at Buttercup. She hit Buttercup right at the face, sending the girl breaking through a pillar and finally hitting the ground. She finally hit the ground and fell unconscious. Blossom and Bubbles were wide-eyed, surprised at what happened. Of course they weren't alone, as every kid present was surprised. The girls got back to themselves and faced Princess determinedly on their feet. Blossom clenched her fists tightly before throwing it to the ground. Her action sent tons of rocks at Princess, who didn't seem intimidated by them. Princess simply raised her cannon-covered hands and shot direct lasers at the attack. This caused an explosion that dust covered the entire scene. Before Princess knew it, she was hit by double direct laser beams at her chest. The villainess was taken aback, but remained on her feet to face her opponents. Through the dust cloud, Blossom flew straight at Princess and threw a fast punch at her face. Princess was sent flying from her feet and hit the ground. She stood up to her feet and faced the girls. But she was unaware of Bubbles coming behind her while the villainess faced Blossom. The blue-eyed Powerpuff Girl came at Princess from behind and kicked her, sending her straight at Blossom. When Princess was sent at Blossom, the Powerpuff sidestepped until Princess almost passed her. She quickly grabbed her wrist and flew up in the air with the villainess in her hand. Once she got to the ceiling, she did a backflip and threw Princess to the ground. Nothing could stop the villainess from falling until she made contact with the ground. However, Blossom was not through as she flew at Princess. She hovered above Princess and let out a breath of ice from her mouth. Princess was getting up to her feet despite the beating, but the sudden ice attack covered her. Blossom stopped her attack and waited for the ice fog to fade away. But when it cleared, the girls and everyone else were shocked. Princess stood up straight, though she looked very angry. Her suit had a red aura that prevented her from freezing by Blossom's ice power. The villainess glared at Blossom directly and yelled angrily, "Now it's my turn." Within the villainess's right fist, a red elastic energy WHP formed. She swung the WHP at Blossom, trapping her by the foot despite the Powerpuff tried to fly away. She swung the Blossom around the air while making her hit a pillar and a wall. Bubbles became scared and flew at Princess. "Let my sister go." "My pleasure." Princess smirked. The villainess swung Blossom at Bubbles, sending both of them to hit the ground. While the two were down, she made the WHP to disappear and closed her eyes to concentrate. As she did so, her hands went forward at the girls and an orange formed around their waist. By the time girls tried breaking free, it was too late. Their hands were by their sides and their legs were held together by an orange energy ring. Princess put down her hand and laughed. But it didn't last long as she felt a tingly feeling as a warning of something coming at her. She quickly turned around and made a green shield to cover with her hands up just in time to obstruct a laser beam. She put it down and looked up to find Buttercup hovering above her. "I see you never give up." Buttercup snarled a bit and cracked her fists. "First rule about me, Princess. I never give up." Immediately she said that, the Powerpuff Girl flew straight at Princess and threw a punch. But at the last second, the villainess disappeared, letting the fist to pass her. Before Buttercup could question her disappearance, Princess reappeared right behind her. The Powerpuff looked back and glared at the girl angrily. "Do you really think you can run away from me that easily?" "Who said anything about running?" Princess's voice came from behind her. Buttercup became confused and looked back and saw another image of Princess. Then another voice of hers came from her right. "Yeah, Buttercup. I'm right here." The Real Princess stood by her right. Seeing that Princess had surrounded her, Buttercup concluded that the villainess made duplicates of herself. Of course she wasn't worried about it, but rather was angry at Princess. She charged up her eyes to fire, which made them glow red. However, Princess took a short breath of air and let out a sonic scream like Bubbles. Her duplicates did the same thing, sending all of their attacks at Buttercup. The tough Powerpuff Girl screamed in pain as she held her ears in an attempt to block the attack. It was getting too much, but that didn't stop Buttercup from shooting each duplicate with her laser beams. Each duplicate she shot, that duplicate shattered into yellow star dust. She finally faced the real Princess and shot her laser beams at her. However, to her shock, Princess vanished like the others. This meant that who she thought was the real princess was actually a duplicate. Angered but also weakened, Buttercup cried out in anger, "Come out here, coward! Who are you calling a coward?" Buttercup right behind her and found Princess standing. However, before she could act, Princess's hand went into Buttercup's chest intangibly. Everyone and the captured Powerpuff Girls gasped when they saw the hand go deep within Buttercup's melons. Buttercup couldn't do anything as she felt a squeeze on her chest before blacking out. When Princess brought out her hand, Buttercup fell to the ground. The kids and the girls gasped, which brought the attention of Princess. "I didn't kill her yet," she told them as she faced the captured girls. "I want to kill her along with her sisters. That way not even one of them will last." Ben gasped, "Oh no." Princess failed to see the shock expression on Ben's face as she picked up Buttercup and went to the captured girls. She threw the defeated Powerpuff next to the others and formed a ring around her in case she woke up before she ends them. Princess then backed up a bit and formed a yellow energy ball in each hand and shot a huge energy blast from them. The Powerpuff Girls could do nothing as they squeezed their eyes shut and hoped for the better to live. Ben watched the whole thing and came to a conclusion: Princess is evil. "No!" Ben shouted and jumped into the air. He landed right in front of the girls, surprising them and Princess. The blast came right at him, but he quickly slammed the Omnitrix down. A flash of light engulfed him before going away. When it went down, Ben stood as Perk Upchuck. Immediately the two blasts came. Upchuck opened his mouth and ate them right before everyone. He swallowed down to his stomach and it glowed within with no bad effect on him. "Stop this now, Princess," Upchuck told the villainess firmly. Princess was wide-eyed at what she saw. When Upchuck's voice registered in her mind, she shook her head and yelled at the hero, "You're a freak too." "I'm not a freak," Ben said with the deadliest glare his alien form can give. "I thought you were good, Princess. But beating and threatening to kill my friends has gone far enough." "Too bad." Princess smiled slyly, "For staying by their side you die with them." At the last word, Upchuck prepared himself to fire. Not happening. Upchuck opened his mouth and let out the same blast he ate previously. Princess didn't accept it, so as a first reaction she held her hands up to shield herself. The blast hit her, which made every kid present to cheer in excitement. However, when the dust that formed vanished they found Princess still standing. The villainess growled through her teeth and shot it at all the kids surrounding them. "Back off. This isn't over." At the last syllable, she formed a cannon on her right hand and shot it at the girls and Upchuck. A huge explosion took place, making a huge hole in the wall and debris on the ground. Outside, the girls and Upchuck found themselves a bit far from a destroyed wall of the mansion. The girls were still tied despite the blast, so it was only Upchuck that was able to stand up. The small alien felt a lot of pain from the blast since his body was meant to take that much. It was a good thing that he was still alive and standing. It didn't take long as Upchuck stood that Princess walked through the large hole. "Had enough, freaks." Upchuck held his side and panted, "Not a cha." He came to a stop when the Omnitrix symbol began to flash green with a constant beep. Knowing what that meant, Ben frowned. "I meant to do that." A flash of light covered Upchuck. When it died down in Upchuck's place was Ben again. The Omnitrix hero frowned and slumped his shoulders. "Sometimes I really hate when that happens." Princess laughed in full amusement. "So is that the best you got, freak? I expected a bigger challenge than that. I guess that's why the girls kept you. It's all because you're weak and nothing, but that." Ben growled in anger and was about to yell when a mist of dark energy formed right next to Princess. He noticed it and became wide-eyed as it formed into the dimensional villain, Nefarious. "I agree. That isn't your best, Tennyson," Nefarious stated. Seeing his worst enemy again, Ben let out a growl. "We'll see about that." Blossom gasped and shouted, "Ben, get out here." However, her words were ignored as Ben charged at the two villainous. Princess put up a smug look and glanced at Nefarious, who nodded for her to go on. She looked back at Ben and formed a cannon laser blast at him before firing lasers at him. But that didn't stop the teen hero as he ran fast and moved out of the way of the blasts. Nefarious was amazed and so were the kids and Powerpuff Girls. Princess got irritated and stopped her blast at Ben. She put the cannons away and held her hands up, which soon formed a huge yellow energy ball. Ben came to a sudden halt when he came close and quickly jumped back as Princess threw the ball at him. It made a big impact on the ground, sending a strong force that hit Ben. The teen hero was able to do a backflip before hitting the ground, so instead he stood on his feet. Princess scowled a bit with visible teeth and a hot glare at Ben. "Stay still, you runt." "Yeah, like I'm gonna do that." Ben retorted and went to the Omnitrix. A hologram appeared before he slammed the dial down, making a green light to engulf him in a flash. When the light disappeared, Ben stood as a humanoid alien with green eyes and a bat-like ears for a face and a mouth as well. He has yellow skin and wears black pants with white circles on them. The Omnitrix symbol is on the belt of the pants. "Oh yeah. Do I have it?" shouted Ben as Guy summoned a huge eye on his chest and began to charge it up to hit Princess. However, he was beaten to it as Princess shot a single blast at the eye. Guy cried out in pain as he held the eye. "Oh crud. My eye." He was then covered in a flash of light and changed back to normal. That wasn't supposed to happen. "Give up, Tennyson." Nefarious stated right away, "The amour the girl wears is a powerful weapon I developed since our adventure in the universe of Danny Phantom." Ben smirked a bit and activated the Omnitrix. "Then I guess I'll just have to break." He slammed the watch down and changed into Upchuck in a flash of light. "Not this time." Princess shouted and shot a fast blast at Ben. Upchuck opened his mouth to swallow it, but when he did he blew up like a balloon and changed back to normal in a flash of light. Exhausted, Ben began to breathe and went to the Omnitrix. "Okay, please give me a good one." Again, slammed the watch down and was engulfed in a flash of light. When it cleared, he stood as a humanoid insect alien with some shark-like looks. He was dark blue, has a long horn on the top of his head and a large mouth. The Omnitrix symbol was on his chest. "Now we're talking," Ben exclaimed excitedly. A thought then came to him and he took a look at his alien form again. "Alright, what power does this guy have?" However, Ben didn't ponder much on that as Princess shot an electric blast. Ben cried out in pain as surge of electricity shocked him. It was so much that he fell on his knees and changed back to normal. Luckily, when he changed back he didn't feel the pain. Nefarious smiled in amusement and laughed. "Had enough, Tennyson. I'm just warming up." Ben panted in exhaustion. While the whole ordeal happened, the girls tried struggling from their bonds. Ben was easily getting beaten by Princess from the looks of it, but sadly there was nothing they could do. Blossom let out a grunt and cried out to Ben, "Get out of here. We'll take care of her." Princess rolled her eyes with a snicker and appeared behind Ben's back. "Too late, girls. Ben is all mine now." Immediately, the villainess took Ben by the back of his shirt and flew up into the air. The Powerpuff Girls and the kids watching gasped as Ben was taken higher. From the looks of it Princess wanted to drop him. While Ben gazed helpless from the sky, Princess reached to his ear and whispered, "You may be cute, but you're too weak for my taste. Trust me, you're no good looking." Ben cleverly said, "I have a girlfriend and she thinks I'm pretty awesome. In fact, I've had enough of people thinking and calling me weak. It's time you guys see what true power holds." Princess was a bit lost at what he meant, but couldn't care the least. Ben went to the Omnitrix, but this time dialed to the right alien. He found the hologram of a powerful alien he knew and slammed it down. Soon a brightening flash of light engulfed him while also blinding Princess. The villainess let go of Ben and he was sent falling to the ground while he began to change. When Ben hit the ground, the whole place shook violently and a huge dust cloud covered him. Everyone had their eyes on the ground to see if Ben truly survived the fall. They noticed a small white flash before the dust cloud cleared away. Ben was alright, but he looked very different. He was about 20 foot tall and had a humanoid robotic appearance. He mainly had the color green and white on him, while also with large cylinders on his arms, near his wrists, which were filled with green energy. He has an omnitrix-shaped chest and also the symbol of it on his torso. Ben stood up from the ground and bellowed with his hands up, "Atomix." Unknown to everyone, Nefarious formed a grin. Everything was going exactly as he planned. Now it was time to see who was more powerful. Princess hovered a few meters from Ben above. Upon seeing his new appearance, she scoffed, "When will you get it that those freaks you have can't save you? Come and see for yourself, little irritating girl." Atomix said and did a "come and get me" hand sign. Angered, Princess powered up fists and shot an energy blast at Atomix. The Omnitrix bearer did not move, but rather held his hand at the blast and absorbed it. Before Princess could react, he raised his other hand at her and fired the same energy she sent, except that it was green. Princess got hit hand and crashed on the ground, a block away from him. Everyone gasped in the power Atomix just did. He didn't have to do much to take Princess down. But it didn't mean that Princess was out of the fight. The villainess got off from the ground, now angered at how easily Atomix hit her. She flew straight at him with her fists glowing powerful energy and threw her right fist at him. Atomix caught it with his hand easily and caught the other one when Princess threw it. Now holding her, Atomix spun around once with her and threw her straight into her father's mansion. He knew that Princess will get right up again, so he looked at the kids standing close to the mansion. "Get out of here, little ones. It's time I end this fight." The kids listened to the Omnitrix bearer and ran away from the house. It was a good thing though, as Princess flying out of the ceiling with yellow energy all over her body. From the expression on her face, Atomix knew that he made the villainess very angry. He was wondered about it, even when Princess came fast at him. Atomix's fists glowed and he moved it around in circle, HMNA. A flow of energy formed covered on his chest as he brought them close together and faced them at an upcoming Princess, nuclear winner. Immediately, Atomix shot a massive blast that was bigger than him. It cut right through the air and the ground while heading straight at Princess. Despite the power she possessed, Princess was hit by the blast and sent flying into her mansion with the blast followed. In an instant, the whole place collapsed into debris. The Powerpuff Girls were wide-eyed at what they saw. Ben single-handedly took down Princess without getting a hit or trying seriously. It wasn't only them that were amazed, as the kids and Nefarious had also seen it. The dimensional villain grew a bigger grin as he was now satisfied with his answer. Ben was more powerful than his battle suit. Atomix noticed Nefarious and flashed his eyes in anger. "If you know what's good for you, I advise you leave now." Nefarious complied, having seen what he needed to see. A dark energy covered him and he was gone in a second. Atomix then walked to the girls and waved his hands at the rings holding them. The things that held them vaporized into thin air, allowing the girls to get up to their feet. "Now who's the weak one?" Atomix asked rhetorically in a monotone voice. Now of the girls answered as they remained quiet. Atomix didn't mind at all as he turned away and flew off into the skies. The Powerpuff Girls watched him fly away along with the kids as well. "Wow!" Buttercup finally said. Tomorrow, the next day, Pokey Orcs Middle School started out as usual. The event that happened in Princess Mansion was kept on a down low thanks to the Powerpuff Girls persuading the student body to keep quiet about it. The only thing that now worried the girls was Ben. Ever since the fight, the Omnitrix bearer has been so quiet that he barely talked to anyone. Blossom waited for the right time to face him when the bell for lunch rang. She followed Ben all the way to the top of the school building and saw him stand by the railings. He seems to be in his thoughts as she walked to him and stood next to him, facing the skies like he did. "Lovely weather, huh?" Ben said all of a sudden. Blossom nodded and smiled. "Indeed it is. But it isn't the reason I came here." She heard the hero sigh as his eyes looked away in sadness. Worried, She drew a bit closer and unconsciously touched the face of the Omnitrix. Ben failed to notice the watch glow yellow as it sampled Blossom's DNA. Is something wrong? Blossom asked. Yeah, Ben finally admitted, I'm just regret being a JRK to you girls. You warned me about Princess, but I didn't listen. It isn't your fault, Ben. I became overprotective that I lost sight of how strong you are. Buttercup was right after. Blossom chuckled a bit at the last part, wow, I never thought I'll say that. Ben felt a bit better that he faced Blossom, so what now? We do what we do best. Being the heroes and protecting innocent lives. Ben nodded in agreement and formed a smile on his face. Blossom was glad, but felt awkward when a question came to mind, so, Ben, do you really have a girlfriend? Yeah, why do you ask? You don't by any chance have a crush on me, do you? Blossom blushed at those words and was about to speak when Buttercup's voice interjected, no, that's reserved for the red-haired with glasses. Huh? Confused, Ben looked to the entrance and found Buttercup and Bubbles standing there. Buttercup had a sly smile on her face as her hands were folded, relax, it's just me and Bubbles. We've been here doing the whole conversation. Okay, so who's the red-haired Blossom likes? Buttercup was about to answer, but Blossom came at her in super speed and covered her mouth. Almost to the point of panting, Blossom asked with a fake cheerful smile, so who's up for the professor's pie? I am. Bubbles exclaimed cheerfully. Ben knew better not to object, so he agreed. Bubbles led him all the way to the door, leaving her two other sisters behind. Blossom removed her hand from Buttercup's mouth and shot a glare that said, keep your mouth shut. Buttercup only laughed about it before following her sister to the door. Nighttime on Dimension Doomsday, Nefarious stood behind a top railing as he watched below of a massive work. About dozens of workers were fixing his battle suit that he had given to Princess. After the fight, he had taken the suit away from her when he left and brought it back for repairs and examination. The designs of the suit were very different from how Princess wore it. So how did the test go? Asked a familiar voice. Nefarious looked to his side and found Vlad in his ghost form next to him. The dimensional villain looked back at his ultimate weapon and smirked, it went far better than I expected. Tennyson didn't suspect that the suit was collecting battle data. And since he turned into one of his most powerful forms, the battle suit took much data from the fight. Excellent. Vlad grinned as well, it won't be long before the ultimate weapon crushes Benjamin and supremes over his Omnitrix. I couldn't say it any better. Nefarious said and burst into an evil laughter. Unknown to everyone on Dimension Doomsday, an invisible kid was in a computerized room. The person hooked a flash drive into the computer and took all the information he needed before running out. Since he was invisible, none of the guards or villains on board could see or detect the person. The unidentified person opened a secret door that led outside and jumped out of the ship. It never worried the person that he or she might die as the person held a grappling hook at the top of a building. Fortunately, the hook held the pole and the person was building to the top of the building. Once done, the person removed his mask, which also deactivated the invisible suit. Now seen clearly, the person was actually a kid by the age of 11. He has a clear bald head and wore dark sunglasses. The boy held a phone-like communicator and talked into it. This is number one of the kids next door, Sector V. I've obtained the information that might suggest what the adults are doing with a man called Nefarious. Good work, number one. Your next order is to bring it to Moon Base to view it. Number 274 said from the other line. Number 1 nodded, I'm on my way. Once he was done, he put the communicator away and remembered a time he viewed the computer. It showed him a teenager with brown hair and green eyes. According to the little information he read of the teen, it said that the teen was very powerful. Number 1 knew that instant that whoever the teenager was, he spelt disaster to kids all of the world. Knowing very well that the information must be known to the kids next door, Number 1 strapped on a backpack and pressed a bit by its side. 2 small jets sprouted from the side and a tube attached to an oxygen mask came on his face. With that done, the kid was off from the ground and ended straight into outer space. It has been more than over 6 months since Ben began his cross-dimensional travel. So far he met Danny Phantom, the Teen Titans, the Ninja Turtles, and now he was with the Powerpuff Girls. A lot of things have happened during the adventures in different worlds. There were winnings and loses on the heroes and villains' part. He had to combat a mysterious figure named Nefarious who wishes to take over the multiverse and bend it to his own will. But Ben won't let that happen and will do whatever it takes to stop the villain once and for all. Until Ben can beat the foe, he will have to get stronger, stop the villain's plans and ally himself with different heroes of different worlds. As he does this, he will get to understand and grow to be the ultimate BEN10, that is if he lives to be that. It was another fine day in the city of Townsville. Nothing unusual or villain-related took place at the time being. That was a good relief considering the Powerpuff Girl and Ben had plans, those plans being against Ben's wishes. It was one of the things teenage boys like Ben hated the most. The very mere mention of it sends a shudder down their spines. That thing was clothes shopping. It was noon in the afternoon and the girls were escorting Ben through different stores in a mall. So far that day, the girls had brought some clothes for themselves while Ben followed with a bored expression on his face. It hadn't reached his own turn to shop, not that he wanted to. Apparently the girls were fashion lovers, the girls being only Blossom and Bubbles. Buttercup wasn't interested in shopping, which was why she was absent. The girls stopped by a store and went in. Ben waited outside considering it would likely have things that young boys like him shouldn't see. When he breathed a sigh of relief, he got dragged in by Bubbles, who found it funny to bring him in. Over the time Ben had to cover his eyes to avoid looking. "Oh come on, do I really have to do this?" Ben whined. "Yes." Blossom answered. Bubbles smiled a bit and glanced at Ben. "Sorry. Besides, you can open your eyes now before you hit something." "No way, I'm keeping them closed." Ben said strictly, but unfortunately paid the price. As he kept walking with his eyes closed, he hit a clothes rack which knocked him and the clothes down. He yelped and opens his eyes only to see a girl's underwear on his face. Like that wasn't enough, other girls in the store eyed him with deadly glares. "Ah oh." Ben grimaced. "Perv." The last thing Ben remembered was a slap and a ton of kicking. Now the Powerpuff Girls were walking again, but now Ben had an ice pack. He had it close to his face to calm down the throbbing pain he got from the other girls in the store. Bubbles looked to her side, at him, with a frown. "We're sorry, Ben. We didn't mean that to happen." "I know." Ben sighed, at least now the pain was going away. "Besides," Bubbles perked a smile, "now you're banned from all girl-related stores for a whole year." "Yeah, don't remind me," Ben said, an anime sweat drop on his face. After a short while, the group came across a male store. Blossom directed her sister and friend into the store, where they began work on Ben's fashion. The girls picked out clothes for him which he took and went to change in the changing room. At first it was embarrassing, but then it became a lot worse when nearby guys would snicker at the sight of two girls helping him out. "Someone please kill me now," Ben muttered with his head down. Blossom shoved another bunch of clothes in his hands and pushed him in the changing room. Her face was strict as she retorted, "No time for that. Now try out these clothes." Obviously Blossom didn't pay attention to what Ben said. She stood with her sister as they waited for Ben to change until she noticed some clothes not too far from them. Blossom said to her sister, "Give this to Ben. I'll be right back." Blossom then left, leaving her sister to look at what her sister gave her. In her hand was a football cap which was meant for Ben. She decided to walk into the changing room to give Ben, without giving a thought of how bad that was. By the meantime Ben was finding it hard to wear a tight underwear. His back was faced against Bubbles when she came in. But when he felt someone enter he turned and froze, along with Bubbles whose eyes went down unintentionally. Both teens froze for a few seconds before Bubbles dropped the cap and walked back without a word said. By then Blossom walked there with the clothes in hand. She noticed her sister standing frozen with a flushed look on her face in one spot and became worried. "Bubbles, are you okay?" The blonde-haired Powerpuff glanced at her sister and whispered, "I'm too young." "What?" Blossom looked at her sister confused. "I'm too young." Bubbles couldn't contain herself anymore. In a flash speed, she ran out of the store screaming. Blossom blinked twice until Ben came out in his normal clothes. She looked to him and asked, "What happened to her?" "I don't know." Ben simply shrugged his shoulder as he answered. Blossom decided to leave Ben and flew off to catch up with her sister. Once the girl left, Ben flushed and fainted. An hour later, Blossom had finally found the final clothes for Ben. But before then things had been hectic during that hour. Blossom had to find her sister for the most of it. She eventually found her on the top of the mall building, rocking her body back and forth as she folded her knees to her chest. She kept muttering, "I'm too young. I'm too young." Then an entire 20 minutes was spent trying to calm Bubbles down. From there she and Bubbles went back to the store, only to find Ben unconscious on the floor. Both girls had to revive him until he was fully conscious to be himself. Blossom knew then that Bubbles saw the unspeakable from Ben, but chose not to bring it up. Now back to the present, Ben came out of the changing room with a new look. Instead of his usual clothing, now Ben wore a black shirt with a green jacket and blue pants. The green jacket had white stripes which had the number 10 on it. He also wore blue shoes and the Omnitrix was under the jacket's sleeve. "Perfect." Blossom smirked and clapped her hands. Ben took a look at his new clothes and nodded. The new look really went with him. The rest of the day went well. The usual monster attacks happened and the girls and Ben were able to beat them. Other than that they engaged in other fun activities before the day came to an end. The girls slept at their usual room while Ben slept at a spare room that used to be storage. The house was silent for the next few hours until a door moved. That cause was Ben, who began to make his way to the kitchen to get a midnight snack. He knew it was wrong, but his stomach had talked him over it. The brown-haired teen made his way past the girls' room but came to a stop. The door was silent open, so he peeked through to see the girls sound asleep. He was just about to close it when he noticed something odd. Bubbles got off her bed quiet and carried a bag at the corner of the room. Ben didn't make a sound, not wanting the girls' enhanced hearing to pick him up. Soon, Bubbles flew out the window. Ben closed the door quietly and thought to himself as he ran to the front door, "Where the heck is Bubbles going to? Especially at a time like this." He came to a halt and slammed into the front door. Ow! Ben winced as he turned the door knob. It opened and he walked out. A minute later Ben went to the Omnitrix and activated it. The usual green hologram popped up and he slammed it down when he found the right alien for him. A flash of light engulfed him and began to change him. His body began to grow a little taller as he earned horns on his forehead and wings under his arm. When the light died down, Ben called out the alien form he is. "Jet Ray." He then took off to the skies and headed fast to Bubbles. When he caught up with her, he found her landing in front of a building. It had a circle building structure and lights so blind were on the front door. Bubbles flew at the side door and walked in. Jet Ray came closer to the building and went behind a parked car to change back. When he came out he was back to his normal self. Around the building were parked cars that were expensive and fancy. There were people dressed in glamorous clothing that walked into the building. It began to make Ben wonder what Bubbles could possibly be doing in a place like that. Taking a look at a lighted billboard, it had written words which said, "Special Art Auditorium Day 5 Discovery of Artists." Ben said to him. Quietly, Ben crossed the street and went into the same door Bubbles went in. He found himself in a room with another door which peeked out lights from its small spaces. Ben looked around for any sign of Bubbles until his eyes caught sight of the same bag she used. He looked into it and found her usual clothes in it. "Okay, this is odd. Ben said to himself, I wonder what Bubbles is doing here. Deciding that Bubbles might have gone through the door, Ben opened it and brought his head out. The room he came to see was bright with white walls and some art paintings on the wall. He saw a few rich individuals that didn't get his attention until his eyes landed on a crowd that were gathered around someone and an art painting. From the looks of it, the crowd was pleased with the art and the artist. When they departed, Ben became wide-eyed to see Bubbles. Not only that, but she was dressed entirely different. Bubbles? Ben gasped in surprise. The blonde teen was dressed in a blue long elegant skirt and a blue shirt that only hung on one shoulder. Her blonde pigtail hair was loose, letting it down that it reached past her shoulders. She wore square glasses and wrist bracelets in both hands while her face was painted with face makeup. Ben closed the door right away to get over what he saw. Wow, Bubbles looks cute. He slapped his face. What did I just say? This isn't time to think that. I got to find out what she's doing here, but I can't just go there with these clothes. Maybe this dump has something useful. Ben's eyes landed on a clothes rack. It was deserted of clothes except a tuxedo that was about his size. Though coincidental, Ben decided it will do for now and wore it. He finished wearing it when he wore the bow. Then he went to the door again, but this time went out through it and looked around for Bubbles. A round of laughter came from the hall at Ben's right. The Omnitrix bearer saw Bubbles talking and laughing with a group of rich teens. He quietly and firmly walked to her and tapped her shoulder. Bubbles didn't notice and giggled at his face until her eyes grew wide as she recognized her friend. Ben. Bubbles gasped, shockingly. Do you know him? A blonde teen, much taller than Bubbles and Ben, asked. Yes. Bubbles said nervously while facing him, my rich friend from, Florida. Oh, that makes sense, Lady Grace. The blonde teen laughed with his other friends. Bubbles made a fake laugh that excused her and Ben before grabbing him by his sleeve and taking him to a corner. Once they were alone, Ben gave her a look. Lady Grace. Okay, you got 3 seconds to tell me what's going on here. Bubbles sighed. Fine, I knew I would get caught eventually. I just thought Blossom would be the one. Not helping. Sorry. Bubbles sighed again and explained, a month ago I did some work on my art drawing and submitted it to a website. I didn't know that the website was actually some financial institution for art paintings until it was too late. A rich guy that calls himself Mr. Boss saw it and loved it. Ever since then he has been offering me to come to this place during its occasion nights and displaying various paintings I made. Okay, that explains why you're here. But what doesn't explain is your clothes and fake name. Oh, that. Bubbles said with a flustered look, I made that up so Mr. Boss won't know who I am. I worked off the clothes by taking a lot of part-time jobs. It's a good thing I have super speed or else I wouldn't have made it in time. Bubbles then took a breath and held Ben's hand with her 2 hands, so please don't ruin this for me. Once Mr. Boss decides to sponsor my art career, I'll be famous and finally achieve my dream. Ben gave it a thought and shrugged as he smiled, sure, why not? I don't see what could go wrong. I'll like to stay around just to watch out for you. Thanks. Bubbles shrieked with glee in her eyes and kissed Ben on the cheeks. The Omnitrix bearer blushed before following Bubbles back to the people. There, Bubbles and Ben spent their time talking with the rich people and socializing. At first it seemed hard, but Ben got it down a little. He even got a fake name from Bubbles, Mr. Daniel Fenton. Sometime later Bubbles noticed a certain person coming and shrieked in excitement. She gripped Ben's hand so tightly that the teen had to muffle a cry. Bubbles, my hand. Oh, sorry. Bubbles blushed and let go. She then pointed to her front, look, it's Mr. Boss. All my hard work will finally pay off. True to her words, the man named Mr. Boss approached with 2 teens. Mr. Boss was a short hunchback man with a brown mustache and an almost bald head. His teenage company was the blonde boy from earlier and African-American teen. Both teens are at the age of 16. "Ah, it's so good to meet you, Lady Grace," Mr. Boss openly said with a grin. He saw Ben and pointed to him. "Who is he?" "This is my friend. He's Mr. Daniel Fenton, a guy from Florida," Bubbles answered. Bubbles took a lady's bow, which she then quickly nudges Ben to do a bow as well. Mr. Boss showed his impressiveness nature up, even as he then looked at Bubbles' painting that was right behind her. The painting was that of an appealing butterfly with bright colors consisting of blue, yellow, and red stripes. The eyes were green and its antennas were pitch black. "So is this your latest MSTR piece?" Mr. Boss asked as he faced the two. Bubbles became nervous as doubt about the drawing came to mind. Ben realized she wouldn't speak soon, so he confirmed it. "Yeah, it is. I think it's one of her best so far." "Oh really?" Mr. Boss glanced at it and smirked. "I love it. This can be used in the Teen Arts Award next year once I buy it." "Buy it?" Bubbles narrowed her eyes at the man in confusion. "I'm sorry, but this isn't for sale." "What?" Ben shouted. "What?" Mr. Boss's company shouted. Mr. Boss became mute, his happy expression gone. He nodded to Bubbles and said, "All right then. It was nice doing work with you. Have a nice day." With that said, the man walked away. Ben watched as the man and his people walked away and then glanced at Bubbles, who only bowed her head down in sadness. The event came to an end. The people who attended began to leave, including Ben and Bubbles, from the front door. For the two teens the event was depressing, specifically for Bubbles. She felt like all her efforts had been for nothing. It was really painful for the Powerpuff Girl. Ben held her close to him as they left the building. Since then he has been trying to calm her down, though he could hear her crying with a muffled tone. He held her close to his chest when they were far from others and whispered to her ears, "I know this hurt really badly, but I promise it will be better. That guy doesn't know what he just lost. But that doesn't mean you've lost too." "Really?" Bubbles questioned as she looked up to Ben with teary eyes. "Yeah." Ben confirmed with a smile, "Another opportunity will come up. Just you wait." Bubbles sniffed a bit and smiled. "Thank you, Ben." "No problem," Ben said. He pulled out a handkerchief from the tuxedo and gave it to her. "Now clean up. Just makeup is kind of, you know." "Oh." Bubbles blushed in embarrassment. True to his words, Bubbles' makeup was messed up. Her eyeliner had become black and pink from all the crying. The blonde teen took the handkerchief and began to clean it off. It came off quite easily, allowing that cheerful face Bubbles possessed to appear once again. "How do I look?" Bubbles asked. "You look outstanding. No makeup can change that." Bubbles blushed a bit and looked away. Unfortunately, that moment was ruined when an explosion came from the arts buildings. Quickly both heroes spun their heads to the direction and saw it was on fire. Not only was it on fire, but the top of the building was blown up. Bubbles gasped, "My paintings." The Powerpuff made a run for it, but Ben grabbed her hand. She looked back at Ben and pulled her hand from him. "My paintings are in there. I have to save them." "I know, but you can't just go in there like this," Ben said, talking about her clothes. "Besides, if people see a Powerpuff Girl going in there, the girls and Professor will know we snuck out." "Oh." Bubbles frowned and teary face. "Relax." Ben smiled. "I got this." Quickly as he said that, the Omnitrix bearer went to his watch. The usual hologram popped up, displaying an alien form he has never seen before. I wonder what this guy can do," he asked to himself before slamming the face down. The usual green light engulfed his body, the transformation beginning. His body becomes taller as armor replaced his body and a hood covered his head. Not only that, but his face became metal with no mouth and his eyes were green. On his hands formed portholes as he also had fingers with claws. The Omnitrix symbol rested on his chest. Finally the green light died down, revealing the new form Ben possessed. The alien's entire body was covered in red armor, which questioned Ben to look at his new form. Okay, this is new. Bubbles looked the alien form well and asked, what is he? I don't know. Ben shrugged his metal shoulder, this is probably one of the alien's paradox installed into the Omnitrix. I never got to try it out. Suddenly the fire became so high it got the hero's attention. Bubbles again gasped and looked to Ben for hope of stopping it. Ben knew this before running off to stop it. Though he didn't know how, he surely wasn't going to stand there and watch as Bubbles' work was burned down to the ground. He came closer to the place when a gush of water shot out from the portholes in his hands. Falling to the ground, Ben went on his hands and feet as he glanced at his right hand, so that's what I can do. Alright, he got up at this point while his hands were down, let's do this. Another gush of water shot out from both his hands this time and shot him into the air. He flew to the top of the building, where he touched down. But due to the fire burning, the place Ben stood on almost gave out. He jumped before it fell apart and did it again when that part almost collapsed. He stood on somewhere was stable and held his hands upward. I hope this works. Immediately he shot his hands upward into the air and shot a large gush of later. It went high up and came down in drops of rain water that began to extinguish the fire on the building. The people were amazed as they saw from the ground a humanoid alien in red armor getting rid of the water. The crowd began to cheer with a loud voice, with Bubbles who had tears of happiness forming in her eyes. However, the work was far from over. The fire outside was gone, but the fire within was still active. He brought his hands down and punched the roof, making him to fall into the building. As expected, the fire went widely within the building. The water system sprinklers were burnt due to the wide fire. The paintings Ben could see were burnt while a few others had dark ashes. The Omnitrix bearer shot out hands to his side and unleashed gushes of water. He stood at the corridor different hallways and began to shoot water through them. The fire was quickly extinguished, soon making the fire spreading to come to an end. His actions kept the fire from spreading, but it began to get stronger. DMN, I can't keep going at this. Ben looked around for a solution until he noticed two individuals wearing black armor. Their appearance gave them the impression of ninjas, but Ben was less concerned about that. He noticed from their body frame that one was a boy while the other was a girl. The boy held a bag filled with paintings while the girl was taking another painting from a wall, a painting Ben knew about. Bubbles' painting. Ben cried out, which also got the attention of the ninjas. Quickly he shot a gush of water to stop them. But they ran off to another hallway once Ben shouted. The Omnitrix bearer gave chase at them and began to draw close. His new alien form had agile speed, which he was impressed considering the kind of armor he possessed. Once he got close, he shot a gush of water at them, sending both of them flying through the exit door. The girl ninja got to her feet quickly. She looked back to see the alien hero coming after them. She was just about to fly away but realized that her mission wasn't over. Her colleague was unconscious, so she quickly grabbed the bag of paintings and flew off via jets under feet. However, a water WHP suddenly lashed around her knee. Looking down, the ninja saw that the alien had her in his reach. His water WHP held tightly to her before he began pulling her down despite her resistance. Let go of me, freak. The ninja scolded at him in disgust. A small cannon formed on her wrist and shot a red beam at Ben. However, it did nothing to him. Really, you thought that would work? Ben said with a sarcastic tone. The ninja knew now that she would be unable to hurt Ben. But upon looking at the water WHP, she shot at it and it broke, freeing her to make her get way. The ninja laughed manically and flew off with the bag. Ben growled angrily. He heard a fast breeze approach him and looked back, only to see Bubbles. The blonde Powerpuff was back in her usual clothing. Wow, what happened? Asked Bubbles. Ben looked away from her and ran to the building still on fire. Just watch after that guy. He told her. Via water blasts, Ben launched himself to the top of the building. The fire within the building had strengthened since Ben left to chase the ninjas. It came to the teen hero that he won't be able to take out the water by shooting water at different spots. Fortunately, he spotted a big metal box which functioned as the opening of the air vents. He tore off the cover and blasted a full gush of water into it. The large gush of water went through the vents within the building, making its way through all parts of the building. Due to its mass, it broke through different openings and unleashed floods of water within the building. In seconds the fire was extinguished and the building was free of fire. But the water also burst through building's window. Whoops! Ben said with a wide-eyed expression. He saw how much water was pouring out and quickly walked the other way to avoid being seen. At the meantime Bubbles watched the fire destroyed and the water flooding out. She was happy that the building was saved, although unaware that her paintings were stolen. Suddenly Ben landed on the ground, making some cracks on the ground. He stood up straight fine and well and walked to his friend. Ben! Bubbles burst out in happiness and hugged him. You did it. Yeah, but... And I just thought out a new name. Water Hazard. Okay, but wait. Water Hazard? Ben questioned. He gave it a thought and nodded in approval since he couldn't smile in his current form, that has a nice ring to it. Bubbles giggled and smiled with the most innocent expression Ben have ever since. At that moment Ben tapped the face of the Omnitrix and changed back to normal. His face dropped at the thought of telling her what happened. Bubbles, some girl stole your painting. What? Bubbles shrieked. But we can get it back. I managed to get one of them. Ben said quickly and pointed to the unconscious robber. Bubbles glared at the unconscious robber and growled. She marched all her way to the robber, which shook the ground itself. The ninja woke up due to the shaking and questioned dizzily, where am I? The ninja was suddenly gripped by the neck and lifted to meet Bubbles' angry eyes. Where's my paintings? The Powerpuff Girl sneered. Oh, what paintings? The robber said dumbly. Bubbles didn't say anything but rip his face mask off. She gasped when she saw the face. Chad Dixon. Chad who? Ben asked. He came up behind her. Bubbles let Ben see him, surprising the teen. He pointed at him accusingly. You're that blonde guy we met in the hallway and also with Mr. Boss. Yeah, so. The teen arrogantly said, we knew you both are a couple of ponies, but we never knew one of you is a Powerpuff Girl. His mouth then formed to an evil sly as he faced Bubbles. Well, I guess even one of the world's greatest heroes can be fooled. What? Bubbles began to get mad. Her face became full red as her eyes glowed blue. Since Chad had a very close look at Bubbles, he clearly saw that he has pissed off the girl. Ben didn't have to know Chad was screwed. You really shouldn't have said that. Ben shook his head with a regretful look on his face. Last thing to be heard was Chad's scream. Don't you think you were a little HRD on him? Ben faked a chuckle as an anime sweat drop appeared on his face. Huh. Looking at the branch of a tree, Chad dangled by his underwear with dizzy eyes on his face. The poor teen had gotten Bubbles angry, making the next few minutes very regrettable. It was so bad that if Buttercup was with them she would be so proud of what her sister did. The upper side of his armor was gone along with the right wrist and the left leg. Bubbles blinked twice as she came to realize what she did. Oh, I guess I got carried away a little. You think? Ben said while avoiding the urge to facepalm. So instead he let out a forced sigh. Well, now you've traumatized the guy, let's go get your paintings. Bubbles snapped to full attention and took off to the skies in a flash. I'm coming, babies. Wow. Ben only blinked at her reaction. Some minutes later Bubbles and Ben arrived at the west coast of Townsville. They passed by the bridge linking the city to another city and flew into the waters. Fortunately, Bubbles didn't need oxygen to breathe while Ben was jet-ray, which gave him the same advantage. They both flew to the shallow side and began to scan around. This is the place Chad told us. Bubbles stated while looking around. Yeah, but where's the base? Jetray wondered. Let me try something. Bubbles flew a few meters forward. Her eyes became bright blue, which then shine like flashlight and scan the area. She used this ability, her X-ray vision, to scan for any hidden areas. It didn't take long before she spotted a lever by a rocky wall. Found it. Bubbles said and pointed. Jetray went over to it and pulled the lever just as Bubbles flew close. The rocky wall and slide open, revealing itself to be the entrance of a secret passageway. The water around them began to flow into the open place, forcing both heroes in. The only thing they could do was scream as they were forced in before the secret entrance closed. The excess water taken inside began to drain out of open drainages within a large room. When it was all gone, both Ben and Bubbles lay on the ground unconscious. Now human, Ben spat out water while Bubbles began to regain consciousness. Her eyes looked around foggy until she rubbed them and got a better view. Where are we? She asked. Ben coughed a bit and rubbed his eyes. Both heroes got up to their feet and got a good look of the place. They were in a huge white room with electrical ceiling lights. There were a few fishes flopping on the white ground helpless and a few crates strapped to the ground. Likely the fishes were there due to the rushed in water, and the strapped-down crates were to avoid the water from taking it away. I think we're in the place Chad told us. Ben finally said. Okay. But where's my... Ben slaps his mouth around Bubbles' mouth, shutting the girl up. A round of footsteps was coming from a wall at their right. Bubbles heard it and quickly wrapped her hands around Ben. The Omnitrix bearer was surprised and almost about to question her until she flew them up to the ceiling. It didn't take long for some men dressed in ice cream uniforms to rush in. The ice cream men scanned the area while wielding ice cream mechanized guns. It was most likely that Ben and Bubbles unintentionally sprung the alarms when they got in. But now that the ice cream men were there, the door was open. Bubbles pointed to the entrance, which Ben acknowledged and nodded to her. The ice cream men had spread out to find the intruders, allowing both heroes to fly through the entrance unnoticed. They passed a corridor before finally stopping when no one was around. Bubbles let Ben touch the ground as both of them let out a breath of relief. Wow, that was close. Bubbles and Ben said simultaneously. The two teens glanced at each other, surprised at what they said. Jinx! Both shouted at each other. Dang it! Not again. They ended up saying the same words at the same time. It then made them to laugh, such a relief they needed. Ben was the first to stop as he faced the situation at hand. Bubbles, I got a plan. Ben told her, which got the Powerpuff attention. He continued, this whole place runs by electronics. If we're gonna find your paintings, I'll just go upgrade, find the nearest computer and find your paintings. That's great. Bubbles agreed and then pointed behind her, or we can just follow that guy with the bag with my paintings. True to her words, a guy in black armor held a bag that held her paintings. Bubbles ran off to follow him as Ben blushed from embarrassment and followed. Together, they followed the man as he went to a door, typed a few passwords and walked in. The door slid open, long enough for him to walk through and the heroes before it then closed. Both heroes found themselves in an open area filled with armored teen ninjas and different transportation. A small part of the ceiling opened, allowing a jet to fly in as the water above stayed in position. Several carts were driven to different sides and places of the base. However, Ben and Bubbles had to be careful to avoid being detected. They stood behind a big box and watched as the guy took the bag and gave it to a man in a white anti-infection suit. That person then walked into an elevator and was gone. They saw he was heading down. Shoot! We're gonna lose him. Ben shouted, though not too loud. Bubbles glanced at the elevator and then to another one next to it. Normally there would be the idea of following the guy, but one thing stood in their way. There were soldiers passing by and no other place to hide to avoid being detected. However, the Powerpuff Girl was clearly determined to follow that guy and recover her paintings. Unexpectedly, she grabbed Ben's wrist and ran very fast. Her speed broke the time stream, allowing their surroundings to slow down. Anyone outside it would barely notice a blur passing them. Ben was even affected by the time stream, but fortunately Bubbles was able to rip the elevator door open by pushing one side with her hand and the other with her leg. Once inside, she threw Ben to the wall and forced the doors closed. Bubbles became exhausted and collapsed to the ground. The time stream finally resumed, with Ben resuming to his exact reaction from before. "How are we? Wait, we're in?" Ben questioned as he looked around. Indeed, they were within the elevator, which surprised the young hero. He stood up to the ground and found Bubbles lying on the ground confused. His worries for the girl came up as he got on his knees. "Bubbles, what happened? Are you okay?" Bubbles heaved at each passing second, but managed to speak. "Did I get us in?" "What?" It then came to Ben's realization at what happened. Being a super-powered hero with experiences of the time, Ben easily guessed that Bubbles must have broken through the time stream by using super speed. He didn't know that the girl or her sisters were even capable of that, but from the looks of it the cause of breaking the time stream exhausted her. "Yes, you did." Bubbles smiled in relief and closed her eyes to rest. The brown-haired teen let out a breath of relief and went to the elevator control panel and pushed the floor they intend to go. By the time the elevator dinged, Ben and Bubbles quickly ran for cover to avoid getting seen. They got behind a machine, just in time as no one suspected their presence. The elevator had gone so down that they were now in the bottom part of the secret base. It was a good thing since Bubbles was able to rest just enough for them to get there. Quietly they peeked to see what was unfolding. A huge hole stood in the middle of the room with railings that surrounded it to avoid anybody from falling in. Some individuals stood around it, one of them being Mr. Boss. The rest was a group of kids who stood a lot closer than anyone should and a man entirely black with yellow eyes and a pipe. "Start the operation," Mr. Boss ordered in a loud tone. A group of ice cream men ran from different directions, with each holding a big bag of sugar. They ran to the huge mechanized hole and threw all the bags in. "Sugar!" they shouted. Those men then ran off, giving way for men dressed in anti-infection suits to take their place and pour in a bag of spice. Spice! Oh no! Ben and Bubbles gasped in shock. Those were the sequence to that Professor Utonium used to make the Powerpuff Girls. "That's the professor's formula," Ben said in an intense tone. "If your paintings are here, then that means that they're gonna use it as one of the ingredients." Bubbles cried out shock. Mr. Boss held his hand up as the spice was poured in. The female robber from earlier took the bag of paintings along with other armored teenagers. Each person had a bag filled with precious kids and teen items such as toys, makeup, roller skates, clothes, and of course Bubbles' paintings. "Unleash them," Mr. Boss ordered. No. Bubbles couldn't take the pain of losing her paintings anymore. The Powerpuff Girl flew off to the female ninja to take them away. She knocked the girl to the girl, but it was too late. The paintings and other ingredients were poured into the hole and mixed with the others. Bubbles was distracted as she watched in horror as her paintings were gone, that she got shot to the head by an energy beam from the ninja. Mr. Boss became alarmed and turned to the hiding spot Bubbles came up. He saw Ben and shouted, "Get that intruder." It didn't take long before Ben was captured too. They had come in so fast that before Ben could slam the watch to change into an alien, he was already taken away. He and the unconscious Bubbles were presented before Mr. Boss, who smug at them. "Well, I guess the jig is up, Mr. Daniel Fenton," and Mr. Boss said with a stop as he realized Bubbles was unconscious. He scolded, "Can someone wake her up? I have to monologue here." "Yes, sir," responded a teen. That teen came with a bucket of water and dumped it on Bubbles. The Powerpuff Girl immediately gasped for air before a black collar was clasped on her neck. Her reflex made her to try and remove it, which sent powerful jolts of electricity to shock her. Ben glared at the man and yelled, you son of a h. One of the teen soldiers shocked Ben with an electric glove. The brown-haired hero screamed from the pain until the person drew it back. Mr. Boss smirked, "Don't talk back at me, you little BRT. You and that ungrateful Powerpuff should be happy we used her paintings as part of our plan." What plan? Ben managed to say while weakened. Ha! A plan to finally outmatch those snorts nose BRTS, the kids next door. What? Mr. Boss was taken aback. The kids next door. Everyone knows about those meddling BRTS. Ben thought about it but couldn't understand who they are. It became logical to know that whoever those guys are, they were the good guys since the bad guys were so intent to get rid of them. The Omnitrix bearer formed a smirk as his head was low. "Well, I hope they sure kick your butt after this." Mr. Boss let out an angry yell and raised his hand to backhand Ben. His hand came close to Ben's face but never came to hit him. Instead, a voice of firm and strict authority yelled. "Mr. Boss!" shouted the man in complete black. "Huh?" Mr. Boss looked back and bowed his head down. "Sorry, Father. I was just..." "No time for talking." Father interrupted him. "My delightful children and I came to see what your months of building has led to. You promised me a weapon that will render the kids next door useless. All I had to do was pay for this entire base while you handled the resources with your wealth. I definitely didn't come here to watch you bicker with two young teenagers." Mr. Boss stood silent and took in the yelling. As much as he hated being bossed around, he knew that with the combined power of him and Father, they could stand the chance to defeat their enemies once and for all. Maybe after this he'll make Father pay for the humiliation. Of course. He nodded. The bald-headed man drew out a small box from his suit and displayed it. "Behold, the last component needed to complete the creation." Bubbles' attention was gotten from that statement. The pain from the shock had left her feeling hurt, but it went away. Apparently the collar had the ability to suppress her powers, making her as weak as a normal human girl. So, just as everyone was listening to Mr. Boss at that moment, she was also listening and was baffled. "Don't do this," she retaliated. This got the attention of Mr. Boss and others who now had their eyes on her. At this point she had tears in her eyes. Making another Powerpuff Girl is very dangerous. "You can't do this." Another wave of painful voltage shocked Bubbles. She cried out in pain, which made Ben angry. "Leave her alone, you freak." Mr. Boss gritted his teeth in anger and backhanded Ben. He said nothing else as he turned back and opened the box. Inside it was a string of brown hair which he then pushed into the mechanized hole. That little hair fell to the very bottom of the mixed components and sank in. A moment of silence took the air as all eyes were at the hole. Ben and Bubbles were among the people as they watched with fearful eyes at what could happen. Then suddenly the ground began to shake violently that made everyone present to stumble. A loud explosion erupted from the hole and a splash of colorful energy went high in the air. At this point everyone gawked at the sight before them. Multicolored energy swarmed around a big orb of white energy until it shined so brightly that it blinded everyone in the room. Fortunately everyone was able to shield their eyes. The light soon died down to reveal an unconscious teenage girl with brown hair hovering in the air. Everyone was wide-eyed with mouth open. Mr. Boss has completed something nobody thought could be possible. He has successfully created a Powerpuff Girl, their very own weapon against the kids next door. Mr. Boss smiled widely and began to chuckle. He could imagine all the ways they could destroy the kids next door organization with their new weapon. It had taken months of planning, spending money and waste of resources, and now his goal has been completed. However, the same could not go for Ben and Bubbles. The Omnitrix bearer was shocked to see another Powerpuff Girl that was not from the girls. He looked at her in detail and noticed what she wore and has. Her hair was a long ponytail that reached all the way to her waist. She wore a purple shirt which had a triangle-shaped shot that showed her BRST melons and wore black pants. Bubbles began to form tears in her eyes as a familiar face flashed before her eyes. The girl looked almost like a sister the Powerpuff Girls once when they were little girls. But due to an incident involving the unstable chemical X she possessed, she died. So now seeing a girl that looked exactly like the sister she lost made her sad. "Bunny," Bubbles whispered. Mr. Boss decided then to break the silence. He raised his hands up and called out the girl, Experiment 13. The girl's eyelids slowly flew open. She turned her body slowly and looked down at the man that called her. Bubbles gasped as tears came rushing down at the horror. She held her mouth to hold her voice from rising, but Ben could easily hear it. He casted an angry glare at Mr. Boss and knew right away that he would have to spring into action soon. At the meantime the girl came closer to Mr. Boss. She had a look of curiosity and confusion. "Who am I, mister? I can't remember who I am." "You're Experiment 13. Mr. Boss informed her, "Your sole purpose of your creation is to serve me and obey my orders without questioning." "That's a lie," Bubbles cried out. She kept crying as her eyes were on Experiment 13, "Your name is Bunny. You were actually created some years ago but you were too unstable. When my sisters and I were weakened and almost defeated, you came and saved us. But the unstable chemical X within you became too unstable and you died." "Silence!" shouted another ninja. Again Bubbles got electrocuted and screamed in pain. Her voice grew so high that it could be heard all over the base. The delightful children only giggled as they watched the Powerpuff Girls' torture go on. Ben let a stream of tears form from his eyes as he looked away. It became too much for him to bear anymore. Angrily, Ben got up and his head to the bottom chin of his captor. "Enough." The impact with the metal armor hurt Ben's herd but he couldn't care. He sidetracked and grabbed a fist blow from another teen soldier before throwing that person over him to the ground. However both ninja he took down were able to get up and soon he found himself surrounded by more teen ninjas. Mr. Boss watched with a smirk while his creation just eyed the whole situation. Bubbles was forced away from her friend despite her protests. When all hopes almost seemed lost for Ben, a flash of light emitted from him. The teen soldiers suddenly were pushed away by a mighty fire blast. Heat blast. Standing in Ben's place was a 9-foot-tall alien. His body composed of molten rocks and fire. The Omnitrix symbol stayed on his chest. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 3. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and Man of Cartoons on fanfiction.net. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.